Thank you, Prof. And thank you for this privilege. Xola will take the first lot, and then I will supplement what he has said. But greetings to everyone. Over to you, Xola.
Brilliant. Thank you, Thuli.
Thank you so much, Prof Thuli, and thank you, Antoinette. Hello, everybody. My name is Xola Njengele, and yeah, let me just get into it. So, with regards to this topic, I think as a point of departure, or for me personally, I literally thought about how on campuses in general we have a different understanding of, or actually experience on campus. And I think even when we start at our institutions, we do have a different experience, or kind of like how we experience it. And I think as a point of departure, we can start there, and that can help facilitate an effective conversation of ensuring that we don't just bicker on viewing how campuses should be inclusive, but then understanding that from get-go, we experience campus differently, and therefore how we see campus as an inclusive campus will also differ in that light. Now, with those words being said, I kept it, a bit more social in terms of what I'm going to be saying, and brought it down to 3 points, mostly being around my experience and the experiences of colleagues and friends, students, all of them at that. And basically, I had an engagement with all of them and told them, oh, this is my topic. What do you think? Do you really think we can promote an inclusive campus culture through multilingualism? And yeah, I have 3 points. And the first one being a limitation in extending multilingualism. So with that, my friend mentioned one thing that, she found that in a space where there is a dominant language, she had often encountered that those who assimilate to that language or understand that language and speak it fluently, and the majority also engage in that language, it is difficult for them to intercept with their own home language, which is Tsonga, because the other students may feel comfortable in engaging in that particular language. However, when they would like to engage in their own language, let's say Tsonga, it would be a manner of get someone to translate for you, or just find someone to translate for you within that particular space. However, the most important thing that often gets neglected within that engagement is, do we actually make our spaces safe enough for us to actually have those engagements? Is that space a safe space for this party to be comfortable enough to be like, guys, I cannot express myself in this language of the majority. Can I actually engage in my own language? And someone who may pick up what I'm trying to say along the way can translate for me. And I think it is important that we create safe spaces in that regard, that it may eventually even lead to translanguaging, and in and of itself create a safe space for us to engage with each other and allow each other to grow in that. And I think that's one of the many ways of creating a safe space and then allowing each and every one of us to grow within that. And I think the other element to it is that it's both sides. So even if the ones who can engage in the language of the majority or the dominant language, it doesn't mean that they are now absent in all of this. They also need to feel safe in that they can learn the language of the other. They can learn and embrace their mistakes, embrace that we can grow within that space. So I think creating safe spaces to enhance multilingualism is definitely a point that I think is not really or truly appreciated at times. So safe spaces to enhance multilingualism. Second point was misunderstanding the value of multilingualism. So when I engaged with more friends, and even me, like, this was a point that always stuck to my mind, that people when engaging, people would be like, I don't need to learn that language. What am I going to get by learning isiXhosa in a Stellenbosch context? Like, it won't get me far. What will that do to me? What do I gain? And the question that I ended up writing for myself is, should there be an incentive? And I think the incentive is being an engaged citizen, because you allow yourself to be, immersed within this diverse society we find ourselves in South Africa. And not to waste too much time, I just want to swiftly move on to my third point, and that was the importance of pronouncing names correctly. And I've one have a Xhosa name with a click, Xola. And I think for the longest time, it took some time for me to get to the point of ensuring people that they can actually pronounce my name, and that they are not afraid to ask me to teach them to ask my name, but I think to pronounce my name. However, what we get commonly, even on campuses, is that when I introduce myself, people at first glance would say, actually, no, thank you, I actually can't pronounce that. And you find that other people would just go ahead with Xola, Xola, and the list goes on, but there really is a lack of appreciation of actually pronouncing people's names. And in and of itself, when we actually don't take the initiative or be intentional about it, we don't realize that we are being dismissive of people's identities. And that's why I wanted to highlight this point, or even engage on this third point, because for me, I think it's one of the important aspects of creating, an inclusive campus culture through multilingualism. It starts there. It starts by appreciating one another, even from something as basic as their name. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Xola. And again, I would like to thank you, to thank the organizers of today for the privilege to be part of this. I want to engage you on language as a bridge, as opposed to language as a wall, when we're looking at multilingual societies. And I am trying to, am I allowed to share?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead. You can share your screen.
Thank you, Prof. Right. Right.
I can see your screen.
Thank you, Prof. Right, so it's leveraging multilingualism as a bridge to social justice and social cohesion when we're looking at social settings and the administration. So firstly, molweni, goeiemorgen, sanibonani, and good morning. What we've heard in the last few days is language is steeped in pain and division. It is also steeped in socioeconomic exclusion, but a lot of it is anchored in the illusion of bilingualism as opposed to multilingualism. You do know that in South Africa, we've always looked at language or at language as a dispute between English speaking and Afrikaans speaking, but the reality is that it's broader than that. But it is a matter that transcends Section 30, Section 31, and 32 of the Constitution, and it includes engaged citizenship and social cohesion. Those of you who are Christians like me, you will remember in the Bible the story of the Tower of Babel. And in the Tower of Babel, to get people not to understand each other and to be confused, they were made to speak different languages. And therefore, the whole question of using language is a means of social inclusion, as a means of social understanding and social cohesion, is a very old problem. Coming to Stellenbosch, when I came to Stellenbosch, I was apprehensive about language. And I was surprised when I came to Stellenbosch that we were mostly going to speak in English. My knowledge of Afrikaans was limited to what I had taught myself through 70 Lang, but my proficiency in Afrikaans was no better than my proficiency in Tshivenda, because even with Venda, I'd only learned it through Mubango. So these two languages, I only just knew what I had learned through subtitles in those softies. And somebody has indicated that academic language is not anybody's home language. And of course, Mubango would not teach me academic Tshivenda, and 70 Lang didn't teach me academic Afrikaans, or even just the ability to speak fluently and understand the conversation. I had thought that I would end up where I was at the Department of Justice when I first entered the Department of Justice, where we had a translator, professor. We had one of our colleagues, a professor, who had to translate for us, and we would laugh 3 minutes after everyone else had laughed, after we had heard the translation, because there were only 3 of us that had come in, and Laville Fernandez was the only one of us who understood Afrikaans fully, and we were the only ones at senior management at the time. So my history of language had come from, firstly, going to school. I was sent to school in Swaziland as part of avoiding Bantu education. And my experience of language was that, firstly, my name, I was not allowed to use my name at school because we had to have home names and school names. And sadly, nobody could pronounce my school name, which was Rachel. They called me all manner of wretched things. So I ended up abandoning it, not because I was woke, but just because people couldn't pronounce my school name. But thank goodness I ended up then not having to have duality. The other experience that we had, though, was when I went to high school, I went to a school where we were punished for speaking our home language once we entered the school gate. So I entered Stellenbosch with this kind of apprehension. I also had apprehension because I had been the secretary for AYOMA, the African Ombudsmen and Mediators Association. And I knew that language could divide people. Our French colleagues had problems with the fact that us so-called English-speaking people always spoke English, and we didn't do enough to learn French. And the same was a complaint by our Portuguese colleagues. So I was surprised that in Stellenbosch, the Afrikaans-speaking people had really made the leap to speak of English most of the times. And of course, whilst I was at AYOMA, we were grateful for translators who could do a great job. And today being the day for interpreters, I would like to pay tribute to interpreters that do a good job. So what have I learned from the Stellenbosch social settings? My colleague Xola has already indicated some of the challenges of learning in a multilingual environment, but where not everyone has been sensitized to what does it mean to be multilingual as opposed to being bilingual. So for example, the pronouncement of student names. Some colleagues at Sanet do speak Afrikaans, and I do understand, because there's a saying that there's no sweeter sound than the sound of your own name. But another truth is that there's no sweeter sound than the sound of your own language. And therefore, some colleagues would like to speak their language because it feels familiar. And neuroscientists say we all are in a state of flow when we are in familiar ground. And therefore, it makes sense that people would like to cling to the language they know. But the only problem that people don't understand, those who cling to the language they know, is that people like me are really not English speaking. I remember when I was in a transformation committee of the defense, of the Department of Defense, we explained to them that it's wrong to say your staff is divided into English speaking and Afrikaans speaking, because the majority of the Africans have English and Afrikaans as not their second language, not their third language, probably their fourth and fifth language. So they've already crossed many barriers to try and understand and be understood by learning language. So I do understand why language is so close to people. It's about familiarity. It's about wanting to belong and wanting to be understood. But the problem with that is that then language can be either a bridge where we speak so that we can understand each other, or it can be a barrier where we speak to each other so that we can understand each other, but we become an in-group. So what could we be though about language? Already I've seen some lessons here at Stellenbosch University that a lot has been done at this university to make those of us to whom Afrikaans is not a second language and English is not a second language to find their place. It is painful because it means those of you who speak Afrikaans feel like they're surrendering to the English-speaking people. But it is something that has been done to create a language usage that makes language a bridge rather than a barrier. But what could we do better? I've seen some lessons, for example, in Medicine University, when I went there to give a memorial lecture, I was surprised that here was a predominantly white university in America that's taught Zulu. And the class in Zulu was always oversubscribed. And I thought, why isn't that in university in South Africa, you don't have a language lab where everyone gets taught at least one language that is not their own, and that's neither English or Afrikaans. So that's an example. One Young World translation, simultaneous translation is one area where some colleagues have spoken about that if we could find devices where when we teach in class or we sit at Sanet, there could be some devices for simultaneous translation for those who prefer for comfort to speak their home language. And of course, at One Young World, that's an example where that is done. In China, even a street person walks around with some kind of Google-like instrument that helps them to speak to you in your own language, and it's got a voice. For us, until then, for us, when somebody sends me a text here at the university in Afrikaans, because I don't understand academic Afrikaans, I put it on Google Translate. And please don't blame me if Google Translate does not do a good job. But at the end of the day, I spoke to you about the Tower of Babel. That's an example where language becomes a divisive thing. The truth is, what we learned at the Topic Forum in Sweden some years ago is how on earth can we live together? The truth is we already live together. The issue is how do we use language to live in harmony so that we don't live like the people at the Tower of Babel. So the way forward, of course, is that language can be used as something that is beyond just us, as a bridge building exercise to encourage social relations. And to do so, we need Ubuntu, where we walk in each other's shoes. Beyond just us is justice is just us is when justice is just about me and a group like me. So what are the questions we're asking you? Xola is going to explain very, very briefly about that, but we're asking questions around policy, whether we should focus on policy and the Constitution, or we should be looking at an intentional transformative approach to language. The second thing is, what should be the role of the broader village in Stellenbosch in the context of Gauteng Town in promoting healthy multilingualism? And secondly, how do we leverage language learning and teaching as well as technology for transformative language usage in order to promote social justice and social cohesion? And where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you.